My name's Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 63 years old, and up until about a year and a half ago, I thought I had my life pretty much figured out. I was living in this cute little house in the suburbs, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I'd worked as a nurse for like 35 years, raised my son Daniel all by myself after my husband passed away when Danny was just 7, and I was finally at that point in life where I could just breathe a little. Danny's my whole world, right? Always has been. After his dad died, it was just the two of us against everything. I worked double shifts, sometimes triple shifts at the hospital, just to make sure he had everything he needed. We weren't rich or anything, but we were happy. We had pizza nights every Friday. We'd watch movies together on the couch, and he'd tell me about his dreams of becoming an architect. That kid was so smart, so talented, and watching him grow up was literally the best thing that ever happened to me. Fast forward to about 3 years ago, and Danny meets this woman named Olivia. Now, I'm going to be real with you here. From the very first moment I met Olivia, something felt off. I know, everyone's going to say I'm just the typical overprotective mother who thinks nobody's good enough for her son. But I swear it wasn't like that. I genuinely wanted Danny to find someone amazing, someone who'd love him as much as I did, someone who'd make him happy. But Olivia, man, she was just different, and not in a good way. When Danny first brought her home for dinner, I went all out, right? I made his favorite pot roast, baked a chocolate cake from scratch, set the table all nice with the good china. I wanted to make a great first impression because I knew this girl was important to him. He'd been talking about her for weeks, and I could hear it in his voice. He was falling hard. So they show up, and the first thing I notice is that Olivia barely looks at me when she walks in. Like, Danny's doing all these introductions, he's all excited and nervous, and she just kind of gives me this weird half smile and goes, "Hi," in this super flat voice. No handshake, no hug, nothing, just hi, and then she's looking around my living room like she's judging every single piece of furniture I own. I tried to shake it off. Maybe she's just shy. Maybe she's nervous about meeting her boyfriend's mom. I get it, that can be intimidating. So I'm like, "Come on in, make yourself at home, dinner's almost ready." And I'm doing my whole friendly, warm mom thing, trying to put her at ease. We sit down to eat, and I'm asking her all the normal questions, right? Where'd you grow up? What do you do for work? How'd you and Danny meet? All that stuff. And she's giving me these short, clipped answers like she can't be bothered. Meanwhile, Danny's sitting there looking so hopeful, glancing between us like he's waiting for us to become best friends or something. Olivia worked in marketing at some tech company, came from a pretty wealthy family upstate, went to some fancy private school, and I could just tell that she thought she was better than me. Better than my little house with the floral wallpaper in the kitchen, better than my mismatched furniture, better than the whole life I'd built. But here's the thing, and this is what really got me. Danny was so happy. Like, happier than I'd seen him in years. He kept reaching over and holding her hand, smiling at her like she hung the moon, and every time he looked at her, his whole face just lit up. And that's when I realized, okay, maybe I'm reading this wrong. Maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe she's just having an off day, and I need to give her a chance. So I did. I really tried. Over the next few months, I invited them over for dinners. I asked Olivia about her job. I sent her little texts here and there trying to build a relationship. And she'd respond, but it was always so cold, so distant. It was like she was tolerating me because she had to, not because she actually wanted anything to do with me. Then Danny proposed. He called me up one night so excited he could barely get the words out. "Mom, I asked her and she said yes, we're getting married." And my heart just sunk and soared at the same time. I was so happy for him, but I was also terrified because I just knew that Olivia and I were never going to be close. The wedding planning was a nightmare. Olivia's mom basically took over everything, and I was just kind of pushed to the side. They had this huge, expensive wedding at some country club that Olivia's family belonged to, and I felt so out of place the entire time. I wore this dress I'd saved up for, got my hair done nice, and I was so proud to be there watching my son get married. But the whole day, Olivia barely acknowledged me. In all the wedding photos, she made sure her family was front and center, and I was just sort of tucked in the back somewhere. But Danny was happy, and that's what mattered, right? That's what I kept telling myself. After they got married, things got worse. So much worse. They moved into this gorgeous townhouse that Olivia's parents helped them buy, and I'd go visit, but I always felt like I was intruding. Olivia would answer the door, and you could just see the annoyance flash across her face. She'd let me in, but then she'd make these little comments, like, "Oh, you're here again," or "I wish you'd called first," even though Danny literally invited me over. And Danny? God, I don't think he noticed at first. Or maybe he didn't want to see it. He was working so hard at his firm, long hours, trying to prove himself, and I think he just assumed everything at home was fine. Whenever I tried to bring it up gently, like, "Hey, I feel like maybe Olivia and I got off on the wrong foot," he'd just brush it off and say, "Mom, she's just stressed with work. Don't take it personally." But it was personal. It was very, very personal. About 3 months after I moved in, I had this health scare. I started having these chest pains, and it turned out I had some pretty significant heart issues. Nothing immediately life-threatening, thank God, but serious enough that my doctor was like, "You need to reduce your stress. You can't be living alone anymore. You need people around you." I didn't want to burden Danny. I really didn't. But he's my son, and he's all I've got. So when he found out about my diagnosis, he immediately said, "Mom, you're moving in with us. We've got that extra bedroom. It's not even a question." And I was so relieved, I thought, okay, maybe this is actually a blessing in disguise. Maybe living together will help Olivia and I finally bond. Maybe we'll become family for real. Yeah, I was so wrong. The day I moved in, Olivia's face was like stone. She didn't help carry any of my boxes, didn't ask if I needed anything, just stood there with her arms crossed watching Danny and me haul my stuff upstairs to the guest room. And that guest room? Man, it was clear she'd put zero thought into making it comfortable for me. It was basically being used as storage, and we had to move a bunch of their stuff out just to make space for my bed. That first week was okay. I tried to stay out of their way, keep to my room mostly, only come out for meals. I'd cook dinner sometimes because I wanted to contribute, But Olivia would make these faces when she'd see me in the kitchen, like I was contaminating her space or something. Then one night, about 2 weeks after I moved in, I heard them fighting. Their bedroom was right next to mine, and the walls were thinner than you'd think. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, I swear, but I could hear her voice getting louder and louder. "I can't do this, Danny. I can't live like this." "Like what? She's my mother. She's sick. Where else is she supposed to go?" "I don't know, but she can't stay here. This is our home, our space. I feel like I can't breathe with her here." "That's my mom you're talking about. She raised me, she sacrificed everything for me, and now she needs help. How can you even suggest?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you, either she goes or I'm going to lose my mind." I sat there, in my bed, in the dark, just listening to them fight about me, and I felt so small, so worthless, like I was this burden that nobody wanted. The next morning, I told Danny I was thinking about moving into one of those assisted living places, even though I really didn't need that level of care and definitely couldn't afford it. But he wouldn't hear it. He told me I was staying, that this was my home now too, and that Olivia would come around. Spoiler alert, she didn't come around. It got worse. So much worse. Olivia started making these rules. I couldn't use the kitchen after 8 p.m. I had to ask before I used the laundry. I wasn't allowed to have friends over. She'd rearrange anything I left in the common areas, like my reading glasses on the coffee table or my tea mug by the sink. It was like she was trying to erase any evidence that I existed in that house. And the comments. Oh my God, the comments. Maggie, do you have to watch TV so loud? Some of us are trying to relax. Did you use my face cream? Because I could have sworn the bottle was fuller yesterday. You know, most mothers-in-law know when to give their kids space. That last one really stung, because I was trying so hard to give them space. I felt like a ghost in that house, tiptoeing around, trying to make myself invisible. Danny was oblivious to most of it because Olivia was smart. She'd only say this stuff when he wasn't around, and when he was home, she'd put on this act like everything was fine. She'd smile at me, ask me how my day was, and I'd just play along because I didn't want to cause problems for my son. But about 3 months into living there, something happened that changed everything. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Danny had gone into the office for a few hours to finish up a project. Olivia was home, and I was in my room reading. I heard her footsteps in the hallway, and then suddenly my door just swung open. No knock, nothing. I looked up, startled, and she was standing there with this look on her face. Like pure contempt, Just disgust and anger all mixed together. "We need to talk," she said. And my stomach just dropped. Because I just knew this wasn't going to be good. I put my book down and was like, "Okay, what's going on?" She crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe, and then she said it. The words that I'll probably never forget for the rest of my life. "You don't belong here, Maggie. You need to leave." I just stared at her. I couldn't even process it at first. Like, did she really just say that to me? "Excuse me?" I finally managed to get out. "You heard me. This is my house, mine and Danny's, and I've been patient. I've tried to deal with this, but I can't anymore. You need to find somewhere else to go." "Olivia, Danny asked me to stay. This isn't just your decision." "Danny doesn't see what you're doing. He doesn't see how you're trying to control everything, how you're always hovering, always here. You're ruining our marriage." And that's when I started getting angry because I'd been so careful, so respectful of their space and their relationship, and here she was accusing me of the exact opposite. "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said, and my voice was shaking. "I'm just trying to survive, Olivia. I'm sick, I'm alone, and Danny is my son. I'm sorry if my existence is inconvenient for you, but I have nowhere else to go." She laughed. She actually laughed. "That's not my problem. Figure it out, but you can't stay here." And then she just walked away, leaving me sitting there feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I spent the rest of that afternoon crying in my room, trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't tell Danny. It would destroy him to know his wife had said those things to me, but I also couldn't just ignore it. I was stuck. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about everything, about how I'd ended up in this situation, about all the years I'd spent taking care of Danny and sacrificing for him, and now I was being told I wasn't wanted. The next morning, Sunday, Danny made breakfast for all of us. It was this whole thing, pancakes and eggs and bacon, and he was so happy and cheerful. Olivia sat there acting like nothing had happened, smiling and chatting with him, and I just pushed food around my plate, feeling sick. After breakfast, Danny had to run some errands, and the second he left, Olivia turned to me with that cold look again. I meant what I said yesterday. Start looking for other options. And I just couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and I said, "Why do you hate me so much? What did I ever do to you?" She looked almost surprised that I was pushing back, but then her face hardened again, and she said, "You want the truth? Fine. You're pathetic, Maggie. You're this needy, clingy woman who never built a life of her own, and now you're latching onto Danny because you have nothing else. I worked hard to build a life with him, and I'm not going to let you drag us down." I felt tears starting, but I was also furious. I raised him alone. I worked myself to the bone to give him a good life. Everything I did was for him. And that's exactly the problem, she shot back. You made him your whole world, and that's not healthy. He's my husband now, not your little boy, and you need to let go. We stood there glaring at each other, and I realized something in that moment. This wasn't just about space or inconvenience. Olivia saw me as competition. She saw my relationship with Danny as a threat to hers. Before I could say anything else, she walked away, leaving me standing in the kitchen, shaking. Over the next few weeks, the tension in that house was unbearable. Olivia ramped up her campaign to make me miserable. She'd talk over me at dinner, she'd make plans for her and Danny without including me, even for simple things like watching a movie. She'd rearrange my stuff in my room when I was out. But the worst part? She started planting little seeds of doubt in Danny's mind about me. I'd hear her saying things like, "Your mom seems really tired lately. I'm worried about her," in this fake concerned voice. Or, "I think your mom might be getting a little forgetful. She left the stove on yesterday," which was a complete lie. She was trying to make him think I was more impaired than I was, that I needed more help than I did. And I think her endgame was to convince him to put me in a nursing home or something. And Danny, bless him, he loved us both, and he was trying so hard to make everyone happy. But I could see him getting stressed, getting worn down by the constant tension. He started working even longer hours, I think, just to avoid being home. One night, about 4 months after I'd moved in, I was lying in bed writing in my diary. I've kept a diary since I was a teenager. It's always been my way of processing things, getting my thoughts out on paper. And I was writing about everything that had been happening. All the things Olivia had said and done, all the hurt and confusion I was feeling. But I was also writing about other stuff. Memories, stories from when Danny was little, things I'd never told anyone. See, there was something about my past, about Danny's father, about how I'd raised Danny that I'd kept secret for a very long time. It wasn't anything bad, but it was complicated and painful. And I'd never found the right time to tell Danny about it. I finished writing and tucked my diary into my nightstand drawer, like always. I never thought anyone would read it. It was private, it was mine. But I was wrong about that, too. The next day, I had a doctor's appointment. Danny drove me because I wasn't supposed to drive myself yet after my heart stuff. We were gone for about 3 hours total, and when we got back, I immediately knew something was off. Olivia was sitting in the living room, and she had this weird look on her face. Not angry, not smug, something different, almost like she'd seen a ghost. "How'd it go?" she asked, but her voice was strange. Quiet. "Fine," I said. "Everything's stable." Danny went to the kitchen to start making lunch, and I headed upstairs to my room. And that's when I saw it. My diary was on my bed, open. Pages all marked with little sticky notes. My heart literally stopped. I couldn't breathe. Someone had read my diary. Someone had gone through my private thoughts, my secrets, everything. And I knew immediately it was Olivia. I picked it up with shaking hands and saw all the places she'd marked, all the entries about her, yes, but also the other stuff. The secrets. The things about Danny's father that I'd never told anyone. I heard footsteps behind me and I turned around, and Olivia was standing in my doorway, and she looked different. The contempt was gone. She looked almost scared. "You read my diary," I said, and my voice came out way calmer than I felt. She nodded slowly. "I did. I was looking for... I don't know what I was looking for. Evidence that you were trying to manipulate Danny, I guess? Something to show him that you needed to go? And did you find what you were looking for?" She shook her head, and then, and I'm not kidding, her eyes started filling with tears. "Maggie, I had no idea about any of it, about what you went through, about what you did, about..." She trailed off, looking at the diary in my hands. "About what?" I asked, even though I knew what she meant. "About who Danny's father really was, about why you raised him alone, about everything you sacrificed." And then she started crying, like really crying. She slid down to sit on the floor right there in the hallway, and she put her face in her hands and she sobbed. I stood there not knowing what to do. Part of me was furious that she had invaded my privacy like that, but another part of me was just tired. So tired. I'm sorry, she kept saying through her tears. I'm so sorry, Maggie. I didn't know. I didn't understand. I sat down on my bed, still holding the diary, and I was like, what exactly did you read? She looked up at me with her face all red and blotchy. Everything. I read everything. The entries about me, and I'm so ashamed of how I've treated you, but also the other stuff. About Danny's father, about the accident, about what really happened. And that's when I felt the tears starting for me too, because those were the deepest secrets I'd ever kept, the most painful parts of my past, and now they were out there, exposed. Okay, so I guess I need to back up and tell you what was actually in that diary, what Olivia read that changed everything, because otherwise this won't make sense, right? So Danny's father, Michael, he didn't just die when Danny was 7. That's what I had always told people, and it was technically true, but there was so much more to the story. Michael and I, we met when we were so young. I was 20, he was 22, and we fell crazy in love, like that stupid, reckless kind of love where nothing else matters. We got married after dating for only 6 months, and everyone told us we were too young, too impulsive, but we didn't care. For the first few years, things were good, really good. We had Danny when I was 23, and Michael was this amazing dad. Attentive, loving, always playing with Danny, always making us laugh. But Michael had demons. I didn't know about them when we got married. He'd been in a really bad car accident when he was a teenager, and he'd gotten hooked on pain pills. By the time I met him, he'd been clean for a couple years, and he never told me about his history with addiction.
When Danny was about 4, Michael hurt his back at work. He was a construction worker, and he fell off some scaffolding. It wasn't life-threatening, but it messed up his spine pretty badly. He needed surgery, and after that, they put him on painkillers again. And that's when everything fell apart. He got addicted again, but this time it was worse. So much worse. He was taking more and more pills. Then he started buying them illegally when his prescriptions ran out. And then he graduated to harder stuff. Our savings disappeared. He'd miss work, then he lost his job. And I was working as many shifts as I could at the hospital just to keep us afloat. I tried everything to help him. I begged him to go to rehab. I found support groups. I did interventions. But addiction it's like this monster that takes over someone you love and turns them into a stranger. Danny was too young to really understand what was happening. He just knew his dad was sick, that Daddy wasn't acting like himself, and I worked so hard to shield him from the worst of it. The night Michael died, Danny was at my mom's house. She'd taken him for the weekend to give me a break, and I was grateful because things at home had gotten really bad. Michael and I got into this huge fight. I'd found out he'd stolen money from our account, money I'd been saving to pay our rent, and he'd used it to buy drugs. I was so angry, so scared, so exhausted. And I told him he had to leave. I told him he couldn't live with us anymore until he got clean, that I had to protect our son. He got so upset. He was crying, begging me not to kick him out, promising he'd get better. But I'd heard those promises 1,000 times before, and I just couldn't do it anymore. He left that night, just grabbed some clothes and walked out. And I thought maybe this was rock bottom, Maybe this would be the thing that finally made him get help. But instead, he went to a friend's place, a guy he'd been using with, and he overdosed. The friend called 911, but by the time they got there, it was too late. Michael was gone. And here's the part I've never forgiven myself for, the part that's haunted me every single day since. If I hadn't kicked him out that night, if I'd let him stay, maybe he would have been okay. Maybe I could have stopped it. Maybe he'd still be alive. I know that's not rational. I know addiction is complicated, and it wasn't my fault. Every therapist I've ever seen has told me that. But knowing something logically and feeling it in your heart are two totally different things. After Michael died, people in our community found out it was an overdose, and the judgment was awful. People treated me and Danny differently. There were whispers at church, at school functions. Some of Michael's family blamed me, said I should have done more to help him, that I should have been more supportive. So I let people believe whatever simple version they wanted. He died in an accident was easier than explaining the whole complicated, painful truth. And as Danny got older, I never found the right way to tell him the real story. How do you tell your kid that their dad died from a drug overdose? That addiction destroyed your family? That you kicked him out the night he died? I kept telling myself I'd tell him when he was older, when he could understand. But then he was 10, then 15, then 20, and I still couldn't find the words. And the longer I waited, the harder it got. So I wrote about it in my diary instead. All the guilt, all the pain, all the what ifs. Every entry was like therapy, getting those feelings out somewhere safe where nobody would ever see them. Except Olivia did. She read every word. In that moment, sitting there with her crying in the hallway and me on my bed, I realized she now knew me better than almost anyone. She'd seen into the darkest corners of my heart, all the parts I kept hidden. "Does Danny know?" she finally asked, her voice all shaky, "about how his dad really died?" I shook my head. I never found a way to tell him. He was too young when it happened, and then, as he got older, I don't know, I was scared he'd hate me for not doing more to save his father, or that he'd be ashamed. Olivia wiped her eyes and stood up slowly. She came into my room, and this was the first time she'd ever voluntarily entered my space, and she sat down on the bed next to me. "He wouldn't hate you," she said quietly. "From what I read, you did everything you could. You loved his father so much, and you tried so hard to help him. And after he died, you gave Danny the best life you could. Everything you did was out of love." I started crying harder then because I'd been carrying this weight for so long, and hearing someone say those words, that I'd done enough, that I'd tried hard enough, it was like something broke open inside me. We sat there together for a while, both of us just crying. And then Olivia said something I never expected. "I'm so sorry, Maggie, for everything I've said and done. I was so wrong about you. I thought you were this overbearing mother who couldn't let go of her son, but you're not that at all. You're just someone who's been through hell and who loves her kid more than anything. And I made your life even harder when you were already struggling. I'm so, so sorry." I didn't know what to say. I was still processing the fact that she'd read my diary, that she knew everything now, that this woman who hated me for months was suddenly apologizing. "Why did you read it?" I finally asked. "Why did you invade my privacy like that?" She hung her head. I wish I had a better answer, honestly. I was looking for ammunition. I wanted to find something I could show Danny to prove that I was manipulative or controlling or something. I wanted him to see that you needed to leave. But instead, I found all of this, and I realized I've been the terrible person here, not you. "You have been pretty terrible," I said, and it came out harsher than I meant it to. "I know. You have every right to hate me. I've been cruel and petty and selfish. I was so threatened by you, by your relationship with Danny, and instead of being mature about it, I tried to push you out." "Why were you threatened? I never tried to come between you two." She sighed. "My own mom and I don't have a great relationship. She's very critical, very cold. And when I saw how close you and Danny were, how much he loved you, I think I was jealous. I wanted to be the most important woman in his life, and I saw you as competition instead of seeing that there was room for both of us." We talked for hours that afternoon. Danny came up a few times to check on us, surprised to see us actually having a conversation, and we'd just tell him we were talking. He looked so relieved and happy that he didn't push it.
Olivia told me about her own childhood, about her mom who was never satisfied with anything she did, who was always comparing her to other kids. She told me about how hard she'd worked to build her career, to prove she was worth something. And she told me how scared she'd been when I moved in, scared that Danny would choose me over her if it came down to it. And I told her more, too, not just about Michael, but about the years after, about how hard it was raising Danny alone, about the times I couldn't pay bills and had to choose between groceries and electricity, about the time Danny got sick and I couldn't afford to take him to the doctor right away, about all the moments I felt like I was failing as a mother. By the time the sun started setting, something had shifted between us. Not friendship, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. "What are you gonna do?" I asked her. "About the diary, I mean. Are you gonna tell Danny what you read?" She looked at me seriously. "That's not my story to tell, it's yours. But I think he deserves to know the truth about his father. Not now, necessarily, but someday. And when you're ready to tell him, I'll support you however I can." "Really?" "Really. And Maggie, you absolutely belong here. This is your home too, and I'm sorry I ever made you feel otherwise. I want us to start over, if you're willing to give me that chance." I looked at her for a long moment. Part of me was still hurt, still angry about everything she'd put me through, but another part of me saw this broken, vulnerable person who'd made mistakes and was genuinely sorry. And I thought about all the grace I'd needed in my own life, all the second chances I'd been given. "Okay," I said finally, "we can start over. But Olivia, if you ever speak to me the way you did before, if you ever try to make me feel unwelcome in this home again, I'm gone. I'll figure something else out, because I won't live like that anymore." "You won't have to," she promised. "I swear to you, things are going to be different." And you know what? They actually were. It wasn't perfect overnight or anything. There were still awkward moments, still times when we got on each other's nerves, but Olivia really did try. She started including me in things, asking my opinion on decisions about the house, actually having conversations with me. She'd come home from work and ask how my day was, and she'd actually listen to the answer. She started cooking dinners sometimes and would make sure to ask what I liked. When she and Danny made plans, she'd check with me first to see if I wanted to join or if I'd prefer to have the place to myself for a while. Little things, you know? But those little things added up to feeling like I actually lived there instead of just existing in their space. Danny noticed the change too, of course. He kept asking what happened, what we'd talked about that day. We'd just tell him we had a heart-to-heart and worked some things out. He was so happy he didn't push for details. About a month after Olivia read my diary, something else happened that really solidified our new relationship. It was a Friday night, and Danny was out of town for work, some conference in Chicago. Olivia and I were alone in the house together for the first time since our big conversation, and I was honestly a little nervous about how it would go. But that evening, she knocked on my door and asked if I wanted to watch a movie with her. We ended up on the couch with popcorn and blankets, watching some romantic comedy that we both made fun of the whole time. And it was nice, really nice. We laughed together, we talked about the ridiculous plot, and for the first time, I could see us maybe becoming actual friends. During a commercial break, Olivia muted the TV and turned to me. "Can I ask you something about your diary?" I tensed up a little. We hadn't talked about it since that first day. "Okay." "There were parts where you wrote about feeling like you failed Danny, like you didn't give him enough. But Maggie, he turned out amazing. He's kind and smart and successful, and he loves you so much. How can you not see that you did an incredible job?" I felt tears starting again. God, I'd been crying so much lately. I just always see the things I didn't do, the soccer games I missed because I had to work, the times I couldn't afford him the things his friends had, the fact that he grew up without a father. I wanted to give him everything, and I felt like I could never do enough. "But you gave him love," Olivia said. "You gave him stability and values, and you showed him what it means to work hard and to care about people. My parents gave me everything money could buy, but they never gave me what Danny had with you. He's lucky to have you as his mom."
And that was when I really started to believe that maybe this thing with Olivia and me could actually work out. Over the next few months, we got closer and closer. She'd come sit in my room sometimes just to chat about her day. She'd ask my advice on stuff, work problems, friend drama, even things about her and Danny's relationship. And I'd open up to her too, telling her stories about raising Danny, about my time as a nurse, about my own life. We developed this routine where every Sunday morning we'd have coffee together before Danny woke up, just the two of us, talking about whatever was on our minds. Those became my favorite mornings. One Sunday, about 6 months after she'd read the diary, Olivia brought up something I'd been thinking about a lot. "Have you thought any more about telling Danny? About his dad?" I sighed. "All the time. I know I need to tell him. I just don't know how. He's 32 years old, and I've been lying to him his whole life. How do I even start that conversation?" "Maybe I could help. I could be there with you when you tell him, if you want." "You'd do that?" "Of course. You shouldn't have to do it alone." So we planned it. We decided to tell him the following weekend when we could all sit down together without any time pressure or distractions. I spent that whole week writing out what I wanted to say, trying to find the right words. I was terrified that Danny would be angry that I'd lied for so long, terrified that he'd see his father differently, terrified that he'd see me differently. That Saturday finally came, and I was a nervous wreck. My hands were shaking as Olivia and I sat Danny down in the living room. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us with concern. "Is everything okay? Mom, is it your heart?" "No, honey, I'm fine, physically anyway, but I need to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago. It's about your father." His face got really serious. "About Dad?" And then I told him everything, about Michael's addiction, about the overdose, about how I spent 25 years letting him believe a simpler version of the story. Olivia sat next to me the whole time, holding my hand, and when I started crying too hard to talk, she'd squeeze my hand and I'd keep going. Danny just sat there listening, his face going through so many emotions: shock, sadness, confusion, hurt. When he finished, there was this long, heavy silence. "You let me believe he died in an accident?" he finally said, and his voice was so quiet. "I'm so sorry. You were so young when it happened, and then as you got older, I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared, and I was a coward, and I'm so, so sorry." All these years, God, Mom, was he using when I was little? Do I remember that? "Yeah, some of it. The times he seemed sick or acted strange. That was the addiction. I tried to shield you from it as much as I could." He put his head in his hands, and I could see his shoulders shaking. Olivia got up and sat next to him, putting her arm around him, and I just sat there feeling like the worst mother in the world. "I need some time," he said. "I need to process this." He got up and went upstairs to his bedroom, and I heard the door close. I looked at Olivia with panic in my eyes. Did I just ruin everything? Does he hate me now? "No," she said firmly. "He's processing a lot of information, but he doesn't hate you. He could never hate you. Just give him time." That was the longest night of my life. Danny stayed in his room, and I barely slept, just lying there going over every word I'd said, wishing I'd done it differently, wishing I'd told him years ago. The next morning, Danny came downstairs. His eyes were red, like he'd been crying, and he looked exhausted. But he came right over to me and hugged me so tight. "I'm not mad at you, Mom," he said into my shoulder. "I'm sad about Dad, and I'm sad you carried this alone for so long, but I understand why you did what you did." I started sobbing into his shoulder, and we stood there in the kitchen just holding each other for the longest time. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for understanding, and thank you for not hating me." "I could never hate you. You're my mom. You've always been there for me, always done everything you could to protect me and give me a good life. I get it now, why you were always working so hard, always so worried. You were dealing with so much." We spent that whole day talking. Danny asked questions about his dad, about what he was like before the addiction, about good memories I had, and I told him everything. the good and the bad. It was like this weight I'd been carrying for 25 years finally lifted. Later that day, after things had calmed down, Danny pulled Olivia and me together. "I want to thank you both," he said. "Mom for finally trusting me with the truth, and Liv for being there for her, for helping her do this. I don't know what happened between you two over the past few months, but seeing you supporting each other like this, it means everything to me." Olivia and I looked at each other and we smiled. We'd come so far from that day when she told me I didn't belong. "Your mom and I worked some things out," said Olivia. "We're family now, real family." And that was the truth. Over the following months, Olivia and I became genuinely close. Not just friendly because we had to be, but real friends who cared about each other. She'd tell me things she didn't tell anyone else, and I did the same with her. She helped me navigate online dating when I decided to dip my toe back into that world. That was hilarious and terrifying. And I was there for her when she found out she was pregnant with their first baby. I got to be in the delivery room when my granddaughter was born, and watching Olivia become a mother was incredible. Actually, having the baby around changed things even more. Suddenly, I wasn't just Danny's mom living in their house, I was Grandma Maggie, and I had this whole new role. I'd help with night feedings, I'd rock the baby when she was fussy, and Olivia would actually ask for my advice on parenting stuff. It felt good to be needed, to be valued. One day, when the baby was about 3 months old, Olivia and I were sitting in the nursery while the baby napped. She turned to me with this serious look. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out." "Okay," I said, getting nervous. "I'm glad I read your diary." I must have looked shocked because she quickly continued. "I know it was a huge violation of your privacy, and I'll always regret doing it in the way I did. But Maggie, if I hadn't read it, I would have kept being this terrible, hateful person to you. I would have driven you out of this house, and Danny and I would have probably ended up divorced because of the resentment. Reading your story, understanding what you'd been through, it changed everything. It made me see you as a real person with your own pain and struggles, not just as competition." "I've never thought about it that way," I admitted. "I know I should have just talked to you like an adult instead of snooping, but I was too stubborn and proud to do that. So in this weird, twisted way, invading your privacy saved our family. Obviously, I'm not saying it was okay." "I know what you mean," I interrupted. "And honestly, I'm glad you read it too. Because you're right, we would have just kept going the way we were, making each other miserable. At least this way we found our way to something better." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "I love you, Maggie. You know that, right? You're not just Danny's mom to me anymore. You're my family. You're my friend." "I love you too, sweetie. And I'm so grateful for you, for giving us a second chance." So that's pretty much the story. It's been about a year now since everything changed, since Olivia read my diary and our whole dynamic shifted. Living with them now is nothing like it was in those early days. This actually feels like home. Danny's doing great. He made partner at his firm, which is amazing. Olivia's thriving as a mom while still crushing it at her job. And I'm here, helping out where I can, spending time with my granddaughter, finally feeling like I belong. My health is stable, by the way. The heart stuff is manageable with medication and regular checkups. I'm even thinking of doing some volunteer work at the hospital, using my nursing skills to help out a few hours a week, just to stay busy and feel useful, you know? One day, when the baby was about 3 months old, Olivia and I were sitting in the nursery while the baby napped. She turned to me with this serious look. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out." "Okay," I said, getting nervous. "I'm glad I read your diary." I must have looked shocked because she quickly continued. "I know it was a huge violation of your privacy, and I'll always regret doing it in the way I did.
But Maggie, if I hadn't read it, I would have kept being this terrible, hateful person to you. I would have driven you out of this house, and Danny and I would have probably ended up divorced because of the resentment. Reading your story, understanding what you'd been through, it changed everything. It made me see you as a real person with your own pain and struggles, not just as competition. I've never thought about it that way, I admitted. I know I should have just talked to you like an adult instead of snooping, but I was too stubborn and proud to do that. So in this weird, twisted way, invading your privacy saved our family. Obviously, I'm not saying it was okay. I know what you mean, I interrupted. And honestly, I'm glad you read it too. Because you're right, we would have just kept going the way we were, making each other miserable. At least this way, we found our way to something better. She reached over and squeezed my hand. I love you, Maggie. You know that, right? You're not just Danny's mom to me anymore. You're my family. You're my friend. I love you too, sweetie. And I'm so grateful for you, for giving us a second chance. So that's pretty much the story. It's been about a year now since everything changed, since Olivia read my diary and our whole dynamic shifted. Living with them now is nothing like it was in those early days. This actually feels like home. Danny's doing great. He made partner at his firm, which is amazing. Olivia's thriving as a mom while still crushing it at her job. And I'm here, helping out where I can, spending time with my granddaughter, finally feeling like I belong. My health is stable, by the way. The heart stuff is manageable with medication and regular checkups. I'm even thinking of doing some volunteer work at the hospital, using my nursing skills to help out a few hours a week, just to stay busy and feel useful, you know? One day, when the baby was about 3 months old, Olivia and I were sitting in the nursery while the baby napped. She turned to me with this serious look. I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out. Okay, I said, getting nervous. I'm glad I read your diary. I must have looked shocked because she quickly continued. I know it was a huge violation of your privacy, and I'll always regret doing it in the way I did. But Maggie, if I hadn't read it, I would have kept being this terrible, hateful person to you. I would have driven you out of this house, and Danny and I would have probably ended up divorced because of the resentment. Reading your story, understanding what you'd been through, it changed everything. It made me see you as a real person with your own pain and struggles, not just as competition. I've never thought about it that way, I admitted. I know I should have just talked to you like an adult instead of snooping, but I was too stubborn and proud to do that. So in this weird, twisted way, invading your privacy saved our family. Obviously, I'm not saying it was okay. I know what you mean, I interrupted. And honestly, I'm glad you read it too. Because you're right, we would have just kept going the way we were, making each other miserable. At least this way, we found our way to something better. She reached over and squeezed my hand. I love you, Maggie. You know that, right? You're not just Danny's mom to me anymore. You're my family. You're my friend. I love you too, sweetie. And I'm so grateful for you, for giving us a second chance. So that's pretty much the story. It's been about a year now since everything changed, since Olivia read my diary and our whole dynamic shifted. Living with them now is nothing like it was in those early days. This actually feels like home. Danny's doing great. He made partner at his firm, which is amazing. Olivia's thriving as a mom while still crushing it at her job. And I'm here, helping out where I can, spending time with my granddaughter, finally feeling like I belong. My health is stable, by the way. The heart stuff is manageable with medication and regular checkups. I'm even thinking of doing some volunteer work at the hospital, using my nursing skills to help out a few hours a week, just to stay busy and feel useful, you know?
Sometimes I think about that day when Olivia stood in my doorway and told me I didn't belong here. It feels like a lifetime ago. Because now, this is exactly where I belong. In this house, with this family, with these people who've become my whole world. And here's the thing, I don't even mind that Olivia read my diary anymore. Yeah, it was a violation, and yeah, I wish it had happened differently. But that diary, those private words I'd written just for myself, they ended up being the bridge between me and my daughter-in-law. They helped her understand me, and in turn, they helped me open up and let her in. I still write in my diary, by the way, almost every night. But now, sometimes I write about the good stuff, too. About Olivia and me laughing over something silly, about watching Danny be an amazing father, about my granddaughter's first smile. My diary used to be where I kept all my pain and secrets. Now, it's also where I keep my joy. And you know what I wrote last night? I wrote that I'm happy. After so many years of struggling and surviving and just trying to make it through, I can finally say I'm genuinely happy. Life's weird like that, isn't it? Sometimes the worst moments, the biggest violations, the deepest hurts, they can lead to the best things if you're willing to push through and do the hard work of healing and forgiving. Olivia and I, we did that work. We pushed through the awkwardness and the hurt and the resentment, and we came out the other side as family, real family, the kind that chooses each other every day, not just because they have to, but because they want to. So yeah, my daughter-in-law told me I didn't belong here, but then she read my diary and everything changed, and now I can't imagine belonging anywhere else. After that initial conversation where Olivia apologized and we decided to start over, things didn't just magically become perfect overnight. I mean, we had the intention to do better, but we still had to figure out how to actually live together and navigate this new dynamic. The first real test came about a week after our big heart-to-heart. I'd gone to the grocery store and picked up a bunch of stuff, including ingredients to make this chicken casserole that Danny had always loved as a kid. I thought it would be a nice gesture, you know? Cook a family dinner, have us all sit down together.
So I'm in the kitchen putting this whole thing together, and Olivia comes home from work. She walks in, sees me cooking, and I can literally see her face do this thing, like she's fighting some internal battle. And I realized she probably still had that knee-jerk reaction of, why is she in my kitchen, even though she was actively trying to change. She stood there for a second, and then she took a deep breath and said, "That smells amazing. What are you making?" "Chicken casserole, Danny's favorite from when he was little. Can I help?" And I was so surprised because the old Olivia would have either left the room or made some passive-aggressive comment, but here she was offering to help. "Sure," I said, "you could chop up these vegetables if you want." So we stood there side by side in the kitchen, and it was awkward at first. We didn't really know what to say to each other outside of our big emotional conversations. But then she started asking me about the recipe, and I started telling her stories about making this dish when Danny was young, and before we knew it, we were actually having a normal conversation. That became kind of our thing, actually, cooking together. It gave us something to do with our hands while we talked, made the conversations feel less intense. And Olivia turned out to be a way better cook than I'd expected. She taught me some techniques she'd learned from cooking shows, and I shared my old family recipes with her. But there were still bumps, you know? Old habits die hard. Like this one time, maybe 3 weeks after we'd made peace, I was doing laundry and I accidentally washed one of Olivia's expensive work blouses with the colors instead of the delicates. It got a little pink tinge to it from one of Danny's red shirts, and when she found it, I saw that flash of anger cross her face, the same look she used to give me all the time. I immediately started apologizing, offering to pay for a new one, feeling like we were going to slide right back into our old dynamic. But then Olivia closed her eyes, took a breath, and said, "It's okay. It was an accident. It's just a shirt." "Are you sure? I feel terrible." "I'm sure. Honestly, I never liked this blouse that much anyway. My mom bought it for me, and I only wore it to make her happy. And we laughed about it, and it was fine. But I could tell it took effort for her to respond that way instead of lashing out like she might have before.
We were both trying, both working on breaking old patterns. The real turning point, though, came about 2 months after our reconciliation. It was Thanksgiving. Olivia's parents were coming to town for the holiday, and I was honestly dreading it. See, I'd met them a couple times before, at the wedding and one other brief visit, and they were, well, let's just say I understood where Olivia got some of her attitude from. Her mother, Patricia, was this very polished, very proper woman who looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. Her dad, Richard, was nicer, but kind of distant, always on his phone dealing with his business stuff. They had money, lots of it, and they weren't shy about reminding everyone. The week before Thanksgiving, Olivia and I were planning the menu, and she seemed really stressed. "You okay?" I asked. She sighed. "My mother's coming, which means I have to make everything perfect or I'll never hear the end of it. She's going to criticize the house, the food, probably me in general. It's going to be exhausting." "Well, you're not doing it alone this time. I'll help with everything." She looked at me with this grateful expression. "Thank you. Honestly, I'm going to need all the support I can get. My mom is a lot." "I've noticed," I said gently. Olivia laughed, but it was kind of a sad laugh. "You know what's funny? I became exactly like her when you first moved in. Critical, controlling, cold. I turned into the person I spent my whole life trying not to be. But you recognized it and changed. That's what matters." Thanksgiving Day arrived, and Olivia was a ball of anxiety. We'd spent the whole morning cooking, turkey, stuffing, 3 kinds of potatoes because her mother was particular, 2 pies, rolls, the works. The house looked beautiful, the table was set perfectly, and everything was ready. Patricia and Richard showed up right on time, and within 5 minutes, Patricia had already made 3 critical comments. The living room was quaint, the flowers on the table were an interesting choice, and apparently Olivia had gained weight, which, by the way, she hadn't. I watched Olivia's shoulders tense up with each comment, watched her slip into this mode where she was like a little kid trying to please a parent who couldn't be pleased, and something in me just snapped. We were all sitting down to dinner, and Patricia was going on about some country club event they'd attended, making it very clear that their life was so much more glamorous than ours. And then she turned to me. "So, Margaret, you're still living here with the kids?" The way she said "still," like it was this temporary arrangement that had gone on too long. "I am," I said. "It's been wonderful." "How nice," she said, in a tone that clearly meant the opposite. "You must appreciate your help." I saw Olivia's face go red, saw her opening her mouth to say something, probably to defend her mother like she always did, but I got there first. "Actually, Patricia, I think we all appreciate each other. Olivia and I have become very close over the past few months. She's been an incredible support to me, and I hope I've been the same for her. We're family." Patricia raised her eyebrow. "How lovely." "It is lovely," I continued, feeling bolder. "You raised an amazing daughter. She's smart, successful, kind, and she's taught me a lot about giving people second chances. You should be really proud of her." There was this moment of silence, and Olivia was staring at me with wide eyes. Patricia looked like she didn't quite know what to say, which I'm guessing didn't happen often. "Well," said Patricia finally, "thank you." The rest of the dinner was less tense after that. Every time Patricia started to make a critical comment, I'd redirect the conversation or point out something positive, and I noticed Olivia relaxing bit by bit, even starting to stand up for herself a little.
At one point, Patricia commented that the turkey was a bit dry, and Olivia said, "Actually, Mom, Maggie and I worked really hard on this meal, and I think it turned out great. If it's not to your taste, that's fine, but we're proud of it." I almost dropped my fork. That was the first time I'd ever heard Olivia push back against her mother. After dinner, I was in the kitchen cleaning up, and Olivia came in to help. Patricia and Richard were in the living room with Danny, and we could hear Patricia's voice carrying through. "Thank you," Olivia said quietly, "for having my back out there. No one's ever done that before." "Your mom's tough," I said.
She's impossible. I've spent my whole life trying to earn her approval, and it's never enough. Nothing's ever enough for her." Her voice cracked a little. "I didn't realize until recently that I was doing the same thing to you, treating you the way she treats me." I put down the dish I was washing and turned to her. "But you stopped. You recognized it and you changed. That takes real strength, Olivia. You broke the cycle." She wiped her eyes. "I'm trying. Some days are harder than others." "I know, but you're doing great. And for what it's worth, I think you're amazing exactly as you are. You don't need your mother's approval, or anyone else's." We hugged right there in the kitchen, and when we pulled apart, Patricia was standing in the doorway watching us. I don't know how long she'd been there or how much she'd heard. "Olivia," she said, and her voice was different, softer. "Could we talk for a moment?" Olivia looked at me nervously, and I gave her an encouraging nod. They went into Danny's office and closed the door, and I went back to the dishes, hoping I hadn't made things worse. About 20 minutes later, Olivia came out. Her eyes were red, but she was smiling. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, actually, yeah. We talked, really talked, for maybe the first time in my adult life. I told her how her criticism affects me, how I've struggled with feeling like I'm never good enough, and she actually listened. She even apologized." "Really?" "I know, I'm shocked too. She said she didn't realize she came across that way, that she was just trying to help me be my best, and I explained that her help feels like judgment. We didn't solve everything, obviously, but it was a start." "I'm so glad." She also said something about you. She said she can see how much you care about our family, and that she was wrong to judge you. So miracles do happen, apparently. Patricia and Richard left the next day, and while Patricia was still Patricia, there was a slight thaw. She hugged Olivia goodbye, like a real hug, and she even gave me a stiff but genuine "thank you for having us." After they left, Danny was in the kitchen making sandwiches from the leftovers, and he looked at Olivia and me, and he said, "I don't know what you two did yesterday, but my mother-in-law was almost pleasant this morning. Who are you and what did you do with Patricia?" We laughed, and Olivia said, "Your mom and I make a good team, apparently." "Apparently you do," Danny said, and he looked so happy. I was really worried when Mom first moved in. I could feel the tension between you two, and I didn't know how to fix it. But seeing you guys now, how you support each other and care about each other, it's everything I hoped for." That was a really good day. As the months went on, Olivia and I just kept getting closer. We developed all these little traditions and inside jokes. Like, we'd watch this terrible reality show together every week and make fun of it. We'd go get our nails done together sometimes. She'd tell me about problems at work, and I'd give her advice from my years of dealing with difficult people in the hospital. And when she got pregnant, oh man, that was such a special time. She found out she was expecting in February, about 8 months after she'd read my diary. She told Danny first, obviously, and then they told me together that same evening. I cried, of course, because I was going to be a grandma, but also because Olivia looked so happy, and she immediately said, "We're going to need your help with this. I don't know anything about babies." "You'll figure it out, and I'll be here for whatever you need." The pregnancy was rough for her. She had terrible morning sickness for the first 4 months, and she was exhausted all the time. I'd make her ginger tea, keep crackers by her bed, help her get comfortable on the couch when she was too tired to move, and she let me, which was huge. The old Olivia never would have let me take care of her like that. We'd sit together in the evenings while Danny was working late, and she'd put my hand on her belly so I could feel the baby kick. We'd talk about names, about what kind of mother she wanted to be, about her fears and hopes. "What if I'm like my mom?" Olivia asked one night. "What if I can't be warm and loving? What if I mess this kid up?" "You won't," I said firmly. You're already nothing like your mother, Olivia. You've worked so hard to be different, and look at how far you've come. You're open, you're loving, you're willing to change and grow. That baby is going to be so lucky to have you. And she'll be lucky to have you as a grandma. I want you really involved, okay? Not just like holidays and birthdays. I want you to be a big part of her life. Her? You're having a girl? Olivia grinned. We found out yesterday. We were going to wait to tell you, but I can't keep secrets from you anymore. We cried and hugged, and we started planning the nursery right then and there. When Olivia went into labor, it was the middle of the night. Danny was panicking, running around trying to grab the hospital bag and time contractions, and Olivia was surprisingly calm. Maggie, she said, gripping my hand during a contraction, you're coming with us, right? If you want me there. I want you there. I need you there.
So I rode to the hospital with them and I stayed through the whole labor. It was long, almost 18 hours, and there were some scary moments when the baby's heart rate dropped. But Olivia was a warrior and Danny was amazing, and I did what I could to support them both. And when that baby finally came out, when I heard her cry for the first time, I swear my heart grew 3 sizes. She was perfect, tiny and pink and screaming her head off, and absolutely perfect. They named her Emma Rose. Emma after Olivia's grandmother, the one nice person in her family apparently, and Rose after me, my middle name. We want her to have a piece of you, Olivia said, exhausted but glowing as she held Emma. You're such a huge part of our family, and we want her to carry that with her always. I absolutely lost it, just stood there in that hospital room bawling like a baby myself. The first few weeks after they brought Emma home were chaos. Nobody was sleeping, the baby cried constantly, and Olivia was dealing with postpartum hormones and breastfeeding challenges. But we got through it together. I'd take the baby for a few hours so Olivia could sleep. I'd make meals and do laundry and keep the house running while they figured out this whole parenting thing. And Olivia never once made me feel like I was overstepping or being too involved. She was grateful for the help, and she told me so constantly. I don't know how you did this alone, she said to me one night. We were both up at 3 a.m., her feeding Emma, me keeping her company. Like, Danny and I are doing this together, and we're barely surviving. How did you manage with a baby all by yourself? You just do what you have to do, I said. But honestly, it's a lot easier with help. I wish I'd had someone like me around when Danny was a baby. She smiled at that. Well, Emma has you, and she's so lucky. Watching Olivia become a mother was incredible. She was so natural at it, so loving and patient. All those fears she'd had about being like Patricia, totally unfounded. She was an amazing mom, the kind of mom who sat on the floor and played with her baby, who sang silly songs, who wasn't afraid to get spit up on her nice clothes. And Emma? God, that little girl had all 3 of us wrapped around her tiny finger from day one. Now she's 9 months old, and she's the light of our lives. She's got Danny's eyes and Olivia's smile, and she's just started pulling herself up on furniture, trying to figure out this whole walking thing. I spend hours with her every day, reading to her, playing with her, just soaking up every moment. Last week, Olivia and I were giving Emma a bath together, which is this whole production involving rubber ducks and way too much water on the floor, and Olivia looked at me and said, I'm really glad you're here, Maggie, not just for the help with Emma, but for everything. You're my best friend. And I absolutely lost it, just stood there in that hospital room bawling like a baby myself. We've talked a few times about what would have happened if she'd never read my diary. Would we have eventually worked things out? Or would I have ended up leaving, finding some depressing little apartment somewhere, estranged from my son? I honestly don't know. What I do know is that as horrible as it felt to have my privacy invaded like that, it forced us both to confront some hard truths. It made Olivia see me as a real person with a real history, not just an inconvenience. And it made me realize that I needed to be more open, more willing to share my story instead of hiding behind walls. My therapist, yeah, I started seeing a therapist after all this happened, she says that sometimes the worst violations can lead to the deepest connections if both people are willing to do the work. And that's what Olivia and I did. We did the work. We had uncomfortable conversations. We called each other out when we slipped into old patterns. We forgave each other over and over again for small slights and miscommunications. We chose every single day to be family. And now, sitting here in this house that finally feels like home, watching my granddaughter play on the floor while Olivia works on her laptop next to me, I can honestly say I wouldn't change a thing. Well, okay, maybe I would have preferred Olivia asked to read my diary instead of sneaking into my room, but you know what I mean. Actually, speaking of the diary, something kind of funny happened a few months ago. Olivia and I were organizing some stuff in the attic, and we came across this box of my old journals, not just the recent one she'd read, but ones going back decades. "There's more?" she asked, looking at the stack of notebooks. "Yeah, I've been keeping journals since I was 15. That's like 48 years of journals." She looked at them with this curious expression, and I could tell she wanted to ask if she could read them. "Go ahead," I said. "You might as well. You've already seen the darkest stuff anyway." "Really? You'd let me read them?" "With my permission this time, yeah. I don't have secrets from you anymore, Liv. You're family." So we spent that whole afternoon up in the attic reading through my old journals together. We laughed at entries from when I was a teenager, all dramatic and convinced that every crush was true love. We cried over entries from after Michael died, seeing my grief and confusion spelled out on the page. We read about Danny's childhood, all the milestones and funny moments. And Olivia got to see the whole arc of my life, not just the painful parts. She saw the joy and the love and the resilience. And I think it helped her understand even more why I am the way I am. "You've lived such a full life," she said, closing one of the older journals. "You've been through so much, but you never let it make you bitter. How did you do that?" "I don't know if I'd say I never got bitter," I admitted. "I definitely had my moments, but I think having Danny gave me a reason to keep going, keep hoping, keep believing things could get better. He was my why. And now you have Emma too, and me for whatever that's worth." "It's worth everything," I told her. These days, our life has a rhythm to it that feels right. Olivia and I still have our Sunday morning coffee talks. We still cook together a few times a week. We take Emma to the park together, go grocery shopping together, binge watch our terrible shows together. Danny jokes that Olivia and I have become like an old married couple, finishing each other's sentences and having whole conversations with just looks. And he's kind of right. We've gotten to know each other so well that we can read each other's moods, know when the other one needs space or support or just someone to sit with. Last month was the anniversary of the day Olivia read my diary. We didn't plan it or anything, but we both remembered. We were sitting in the living room after Emma had gone to bed, and Olivia just looked at me and said, "1 year." Yeah, 1 year since everything changed. "Best worst thing that ever happened," she said with a little smile. Agreed. We clinked our glasses together in a weird sort of toast to that moment that broke us open and forced us to rebuild something better. You know what else happened recently? Patricia came to visit again, and she was different. Still Patricia, still a bit much, but softer somehow. She actually asked me about my life, about my health, about my interests, and when she left, she hugged me, like a real hug, and said, "Thank you for being here for Olivia and the baby. It means a lot to know you have you." I nearly fell over from shock, but I managed to say, "Thank you, Patricia. That means a lot." After she left, Olivia told me that she and her mother had been talking more, being more honest with each other. Apparently, watching Olivia and me work through our issues inspired Patricia to try to improve her relationship with her daughter. "You started this whole chain reaction," Olivia said. "You standing up to my mom at Thanksgiving, showing her that people could defend me and support me, it made her realize she wasn't doing that. She's been trying harder ever since.
I'm really glad you two are in a better place. Me too, and it's because of you. You showed me what a healthy mother-daughter relationship could look like, even though I'm technically the daughter-in-law. You've taught me so much about love and forgiveness and second chances. These are the moments that make everything worth it, you know? All the pain and struggle and awkwardness we went through to get here, it was worth it for this family we've built together, this home we've created together. I was thinking the other day about that moment in my old bedroom when Olivia told me I didn't belong, how small and worthless I felt, how certain I'd never find a place in this house or in their lives. And now I can't imagine belonging anywhere else. Emma is starting to say words now, mostly mama and dada, but the other day she looked right at me and said something that sounded an awful lot like gamma. Olivia swears she said it, and Danny caught it on video. We've watched that video about 100 times, and every time I see Emma's little face looking at me and hear that sound, I just melt. This is my family, this weird, imperfect, beautiful family that we've cobbled together through trial and error and a whole lot of forgiveness. Sometimes I think about what advice I'd give to other mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law who are struggling with their relationships, and I think I'd say this: be willing to be vulnerable. Be willing to see each other as full, complex human beings with your own pain and history. Be willing to forgive and to change. And maybe, just maybe, be willing to let someone read your diary. Okay, kidding about the last part. Definitely ask for permission first, but you get what I mean. Be willing to let people in, to share your truth, to let yourself be known.
Because on the other side of that vulnerability, on the other side of that discomfort and fear, there might just be the most beautiful relationship you never expected to have. That's what happened for Olivia and me. We started as enemies, became reluctant housemates, and then, through a combination of violation and honesty and hard work, we became family. Real, chosen family who love each other despite knowing all the messy, complicated, difficult parts. And you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything. About 3 months after Emma was born, something happened that really tested Olivia and me in a new way. I got sick. Not my heart this time, something different. I started having these really bad headaches, and I was getting dizzy a lot. At first, I brushed it off, thought it was just stress or lack of sleep from helping with the baby. But then one day, I actually passed out in the kitchen while I was making lunch. Olivia found me on the floor. She'd come home from work early because she forgot some files, and there I was, just lying there, unconscious. She told me later that she'd never been so scared in her life. She called 911, rode with me in the ambulance, called Danny from the hospital, and when I woke up in the emergency room, she was right there, holding my hand, tears streaming down her face. "Don't you ever do that to me again," she said, trying to smile through the tears. "You scared me half to death, Maggie." They ran a bunch of tests, and it turned out I had a small brain aneurysm. The doctor said it wasn't immediately life-threatening, but it needed to be monitored closely, and there was a chance I might need surgery at some point. I was terrified, not just of the surgery or the aneurysm itself, but of what this meant for my future. Would I be able to keep helping with Emma? Would I become more of a burden than a help? Would Olivia and Danny start looking at me differently, seeing me as fragile and broken? But Olivia shut those fears real quick. "You're not going anywhere," she said firmly when I tried to bring up maybe moving to assisted living. "You're staying right here with us, and we're going to get through this together. That's what family does." The next few weeks were hard. I had to take it easy, which meant I couldn't do as much with Emma as I wanted to. I couldn't lift her, couldn't get down on the floor to play with her, and I felt so useless. But Olivia made sure I knew I was still needed. She'd bring Emma to me so I could hold her while sitting down. She'd ask my advice on everything, even stuff she knew she could figure out herself. She was making sure I still felt like part of the family, still felt valuable. One afternoon, I was sitting in the living room feeling particularly sorry for myself, and Olivia came and sat next to me. "What's going on in that head of yours?" she asked. "I just feel like such a burden. Here I am, supposed to be helping you guys, and instead you're taking care of me again." Maggie, do you remember what you said to me when I had morning sickness so bad I couldn't get out of bed for days? I shook my head. Because on the other side of that vulnerability, on the other side of that discomfort and fear, there might just be the most beautiful relationship you never expected to have. That's what happened for Olivia and me. We started as enemies, became reluctant housemates, and then, through a combination of violation and honesty and hard work, we became family. Real, chosen family who love each other despite knowing all the messy, complicated, difficult parts. And you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything. About 3 months after Emma was born, something happened that really tested Olivia and me in a new way. I got sick. Not my heart this time, something different. I started having these really bad headaches, and I was getting dizzy a lot. At first, I brushed it off, thought it was just stress or lack of sleep from helping with the baby. But then one day, I actually passed out in the kitchen while I was making lunch. Olivia found me on the floor. She'd come home from work early because she forgot some files, and there I was, just lying there, unconscious. She told me later that she'd never been so scared in her life. She called 911, rode with me in the ambulance, called Danny from the hospital, and when I woke up in the emergency room, she was right there, holding my hand, tears streaming down her face. "Don't you ever do that to me again," she said, trying to smile through the tears. "You scared me half to death, Maggie." They ran a bunch of tests, and it turned out I had a small brain aneurysm. The doctor said it wasn't immediately life-threatening, but it needed to be monitored closely, and there was a chance I might need surgery at some point. I was terrified, not just of the surgery or the aneurysm itself, but of what this meant for my future. Would I be able to keep helping with Emma? Would I become more of a burden than a help? Would Olivia and Danny start looking at me differently, seeing me as fragile and broken? But Olivia shut those fears real quick. "You're not going anywhere," she said firmly when I tried to bring up maybe moving to assisted living. "You're staying right here with us, and we're going to get through this together. That's what family does." The next few weeks were hard. I had to take it easy, which meant I couldn't do as much with Emma as I wanted to. I couldn't lift her, couldn't get down on the floor to play with her, and I felt so useless. But Olivia made sure I knew I was still needed. She'd bring Emma to me so I could hold her while sitting down. She'd ask my advice on everything, even stuff she knew she could figure out herself. She was making sure I still felt like part of the family, still felt valuable. One afternoon, I was sitting in the living room feeling particularly sorry for myself, and Olivia came and sat next to me. "What's going on in that head of yours?" she asked. "I just feel like such a burden. Here I am, supposed to be helping you guys, and instead you're taking care of me again." "Maggie, do you remember what you said to me when I had morning sickness so bad I couldn't get out of bed for days?" I shook my head. "You said that families take care of each other, that it's not keeping score, it's just being there when someone needs you. And right now, you need us, so let us be here for you." I started crying because she was using my own words against me in the best possible way. "Besides," she continued, "you're not a burden, you're my mom." And that was the first time she'd ever called me that. Mom. Not Maggie, not Danny's mom, just Mom. "I know you're not technically my mother," she said quickly, "and I know I have a mom already, even if our relationship is complicated, but you've been more of a mother to me in the past year than Patricia has been my entire life. You've taught me what it means to love unconditionally, to support without judgment. So yeah, you're my mom too, if that's okay with you." "Of course it's okay," I managed to get out to the tears. "I'd be honored." We hugged for a long time, and when we pulled apart, Emma was awake from her nap and crying. Olivia went to get her, and when she came back, she placed Emma gently in my lap. "Here," she said, "she wants her gamma." And Emma did this thing she'd just started doing. She patted my face with her little hands and gave me this gummy smile, and I felt my heart just overflow with love for this whole crazy family of mine. The aneurysm situation is still ongoing, by the way. I have to go for regular MRIs to monitor it, and there's still a chance I'll need surgery eventually. But for now, it's stable, and I'm learning to live with the uncertainty. It helps having Olivia and Danny in my corner, making sure I don't miss appointments, helping me remember my medications, just being there. Actually, Olivia's been amazing about the medical stuff. She made this whole spreadsheet, because of course she did, tracking all my appointments and medications and symptoms. She goes to most of my doctor's appointments with me, asks all the questions I forget to ask, takes notes on what the doctors say. "You took care of me when I was pregnant," she said when I told her she didn't have to do all this. "Let me take care of you now." And that's been the beautiful thing about our relationship. It's reciprocal, you know? We take turns being strong for each other, being vulnerable with each other, holding each other up when life gets hard. There was this one day, probably about 6 months ago now, when Olivia came home from work just completely defeated. She'd had a terrible day. Some project had fallen apart, her boss had blamed her for things that weren't her fault, and she just felt like a failure. She walked in, saw me in the kitchen, and just burst into tears. Not the pretty crying either, the ugly, snotty, can't catch your breath kind of crying. I pulled her into a hug and just let her cry it out. When she finally calmed down enough to talk, she told me everything that had happened. And then she said something that broke my heart. "I feel like I'm failing at everything. I'm not good enough at my job. I'm not spending enough time with Emma. I'm not being a good enough wife to Danny. I'm drowning, Maggie." "Oh, honey, you're not failing at anything. You're trying to do everything perfectly, and that's impossible. Nobody can be perfect at work and at home and being a parent and a wife. You're human. But you did it. You raised Danny alone, worked full-time, kept everything together." "Barely," I said, "and I made so many mistakes. I missed school events, I fed frozen dinners way too often, I lost my temper when I was tired. I was far from perfect, Liv. I just did the best I could, and some days my best wasn't very good." She looked at me like she'd never considered that possibility. "You always seem like you had it all figured out." "That's because you're looking at it 25 years later after everything turned out okay. But in the moment, I was terrified all the time. I had no idea what I was doing." We talked for over an hour about expectations and perfectionism and giving ourselves grace, and I told her something I'd learned the hard way.
The best thing you can do for Emma is let her see that you're human. Let her see you mess up sometimes and apologize. Let her see you ask for help when you need it. Let her see you taking care of yourself, not just everyone else. That's what she needs. Not a perfect mom, but a real one. Olivia took that to heart, I think. She started setting better boundaries at work, started saying no to things that weren't her responsibility. She started taking time for herself, going to the gym, meeting up with friends, doing things that filled her cup instead of draining it. And you know what? She became an even better mom and wife because of it, because she wasn't running on empty all the time. Danny noticed the change too. He pulled me aside one day and said, "I don't know what you said to Liv, but she seems so much happier lately. Thank you for being there for her." "She's there for me too," I told him. "That's how this works." He got this look on his face, kind of emotional, and he said, "When you first moved in, I was so worried. I knew you two weren't getting along, and I felt stuck in the middle. I thought I was going to have to choose between you at some point. I'm sorry we put you in that position." "No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, I'm so grateful that you both fought for this, that you didn't give up on each other, because now I have both of you, and I don't have to choose. I have my mom, and I have my wife, and you guys love each other. That's everything I ever wanted." We both got a little teary at that, and then Emma started crying from her crib upstairs, breaking the moment. But I thought about what he said a lot after that. Olivia and I really had fought for this relationship. We could have given up so many times. After that first confrontation, when she told me I didn't belong, I could have just left. When she read my diary, I could have been so angry that I refused to forgive her. When we had awkward moments or miscommunications in those early days of trying to get along, we could have said it was too hard and gone back to avoiding each other. But we didn't. We kept showing up, kept trying, kept choosing each other, and that's made all the difference. Actually, there's this thing that happened last month that really showed me how far we've come. It was Emma's first birthday, and we were planning this big party. Family, friends, the whole thing. Olivia and I were working on it together, and we had different ideas about some of the details. Nothing major, just little things like what kind of cake to get and what decorations to use. The old Olivia would have just steamrollered over my suggestions and done it her way, and the old me probably would have just backed down to keep the peace, even if I felt hurt about it. But instead, we talked it through like adults. "I really think we should go with the butterfly theme," Olivia said. "I get that, but I thought we agreed on the teddy bear theme since that's been Emma's thing lately." "Yeah, but butterflies are more photogenic. The pictures will be better." "Liv, this party is for Emma, not for Instagram. Let's do what she likes, not what looks best in photos." There was a pause, and I could see her processing that. Then she laughed. "You're right. I'm being ridiculous. Teddy bears it is." "Really?" "Really. Sometimes I still slip into caring too much about how things look instead of what actually matters. Thanks for calling me out on that." And just like that, we moved on. No hurt feelings, no resentment, just two people working together to make decisions for their family. The party itself was wonderful. Emma was adorable in her little birthday outfit, completely overwhelmed by all the attention and all the presents. She smashed her first cake, teddy bear themed naturally, getting frosting absolutely everywhere, and it was perfect. Patricia was there, and she and Olivia actually seemed to be enjoying each other's company. At one point, I saw them talking and laughing together, and Olivia looked genuinely happy. That relationship still has a long way to go, but it's getting better. Danny's boss came too, and some of our neighbors, and a bunch of Olivia's friends from work. And what struck me was how many people commented on how happy our family seemed, how you could feel the love in our home. One of Olivia's friends, Jessica, pulled me aside at one point. "I have to tell you," she said, "when Liv first told me her mother-in-law was moving in, I felt so bad for her. I was sure it was going to be a disaster. But seeing you two together, how close you are, it's really special. Liv talks about you all the time, you know. She says you're one of her best friends." "She's one of mine too," I told him, looking over at Olivia, who was holding Emma and talking to some guests. "You're lucky to have each other," she said. And she was right. We are lucky. Not because it came easy or naturally, but because we worked for it, fought for it, refused to give up on it. After everyone left and we'd cleaned up, the three of us, Olivia, Danny, and me, collapsed on the couch. Emma was already asleep, exhausted from her big day. "We threw a pretty great party," Danny said. "We did," Olivia agreed. Then she looked at me. "Especially the teddy bear cake. You were right about that." "I usually am," I said with a smile. She threw a pillow at me, and we all laughed. These are the moments I treasure now, the easy, comfortable moments where we're just us, just a family being together. No tension, no walking on eggshells, just love and laughter and belonging. You know what I've been thinking about lately? Writing a new diary, not to replace the old ones, but to start fresh. A diary that's less about processing pain and more about capturing joy. I mentioned this to Olivia the other day, and she got really excited. You should totally do that. And maybe someday, when Emma's older, you could share it with Emma. She could read about her first year of life from your perspective. Would you want to read it? This new one, I mean. She thought about it. Only if you wanted to share it with me. I learned my lesson about reading your private thoughts without permission. I might share some parts with you, the good stuff, the stuff about watching you become a mom, about our relationship, about this family we've built. I'd love that. So I started a new diary. I write in it most nights, and it's so different from my old journals. Instead of pages and pages of worry and grief and fear, it's full of small moments of happiness. Emma's first steps, Olivia and I laughing over some silly joke, Danny getting a big promotion at work, Sunday morning coffee talks, family dinners. All the ordinary, extraordinary moments that make up a life. Last week, I wrote about this conversation Olivia and I had. We were giving Emma a bath, our usual chaos of water and bubbles and rubber ducks, and Olivia just randomly said, "I'm really glad you didn't leave." "What?" "When you told me I didn't belong here, I'm glad you didn't actually leave. I'm glad you stayed and fought for your place in this family."
I'm glad I stayed too, even though it was really hard for a while there. I know, and I'm sorry again for making it so hard. I think about that version of me sometimes, the one who was so cruel to you, and I barely recognize her. I don't know how you forgave me for all of that. The same way you forgave me for keeping secrets from Danny, I said. The same way we forgive each other every day for our small mistakes and failures. Love isn't about being perfect, it's about choosing each other anyway. Emma splashed water at us both, completely oblivious to the deep conversation happening above her head, and we laughed and went back to bath time. But I thought about that conversation a lot afterward, about forgiveness, about growth, about second chances. Because that's really what this whole story is about, isn't it? Second chances. The chance to start over, to be better, to build something new out of broken pieces. Olivia got a second chance to be the person she wanted to be instead of the person her upbringing had shaped her into. I got a second chance to be part of a family, to be needed and wanted, to have a home. Danny got a second chance to understand his father's story and make peace with it. And Emma, sweet little Emma who knows nothing about any of this yet, she gets to grow up in a home full of love and forgiveness and people who chose each other every single day. Sometimes I wonder what I'll tell her when she's older. Will I tell her about how her mom and I used to hate each other? Will I explain that her gamma almost didn't get to be part of her life because things were so bad between us? Maybe. Or maybe I'll just tell her that families are complicated, that love takes work, and that the best things in life are worth fighting for. Actually, I've been thinking about the future a lot lately, about what happens as I get older, as my health potentially gets worse, about how our family will change and evolve as Emma grows up. I talked to Olivia about this recently, about my fears of becoming too much of a burden as I age. "Stop," she said firmly. "You're not allowed to think like that. Whatever happens, we're in this together. If you need more care, we'll figure it out. If you need surgery for the aneurysm, we'll be there. If you need anything at all, we're here. That's not going to change." But what if... No what ifs. We love you, Maggie. You're family. End of story. And then she said something that really got me. "You know, when I read your diary that day, one of the things that hit me hardest was reading about how alone you felt, how you'd been alone for so long, taking care of everyone else, but no one taking care of you. And I promised myself that if you gave me a chance, if we could fix this relationship, I'd make sure you never felt alone like that again." "You've kept that promise," I said, "and I'm going to keep keeping it for as long as you need me." We hugged, and I felt so grateful for this woman who'd become such an important part of my life, this woman who used to be my enemy and now my daughter, my friend, my family. You know what's funny? Sometimes when Olivia and I are out together with Emma, at the park or the grocery store or wherever, people assume we're just mother and daughter, not in-laws, but actual blood relatives. And instead of correcting them, we just smile and let them think it. Because in all the ways that matter, that's what we are. Family. Real family. The kind that's built on choice and love and forgiveness rather than just biology. Last Sunday, during our coffee time, Olivia brought up something I hadn't expected. She said, "I've been thinking, maybe I should start keeping a diary too." "Yeah, why's that?" "Because I want to remember all of this, how it felt to become a mom, how our relationship has changed, all the little moments with Emma. And maybe someday, if Emma and I ever have a rough patch, she can read it and understand me better, the way I understood you better after reading yours. I think that's a beautiful idea. Will you help me? Like teach me how to really journal, not just make lists of things that happened?" "Of course." So now we have this new thing we do together. Once a week, we sit down with our journals and we write. Sometimes we share what we're writing, sometimes we keep it private. But there's something really special about sitting together, both of us putting our thoughts and feelings on paper, creating these records of our lives. I wrote in my journal last night about how different my life is now compared to a year and a half ago, how I went from feeling unwanted and invisible to being an essential part of this vibrant, loving family, how I went from dreading every day to waking up excited about what's ahead. And I wrote about Olivia, about this incredible transformation she's gone through, how she went from cold and critical to warm and open, how she learned to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to accept love. The thing is, we both had to change. It wasn't just Olivia becoming nicer or me becoming less intrusive. We both had to fundamentally shift how we saw each other and how we showed up in this relationship. I had to learn to take up space, to believe I deserved to be here. I had to learn to set boundaries and speak up for myself instead of just accepting whatever scraps of belonging were thrown my way. And Olivia had to learn to share Danny, to see that love multiplies instead of divides. She had to learn that opening her home and her heart to me didn't mean losing anything, it meant gaining something beautiful. We both had to learn to communicate better, to assume good intentions, to extend grace when things got hard. And we're still learning. We still mess up sometimes, still have moments where we get on each other's nerves or miscommunicate, but now we have the foundation to work through it. We have trust and love and commitment to each other. Just yesterday, actually, we had a small disagreement about Emma's schedule. I thought she needed an earlier bedtime. Olivia wanted to keep it where it was. We went back and forth for a bit, both getting a little frustrated. But then Olivia stopped and said, "Wait, we're doing that thing where we're both just trying to be right instead of trying to find the best solution. Let's start over." And we did. We talked about why we each felt the way we did, we looked at the actual evidence of how Anna was doing, and we compromised. No hurt feelings, no resentment. Just two people who love each other and love Emma figuring things out together. That never would have happened a year ago. A year ago, that disagreement would have turned into a huge fight, or would have ended with me just giving in to keep the peace. Growth is a beautiful thing. I've also noticed that Olivia is more herself now around me. She doesn't feel like she has to perform or be perfect. She'll come downstairs in the morning with no makeup, hair a mess, wearing her rattiest sweatpants, and she doesn't care. She'll tell me when she's having a bad day, when she's worried about something, when she messes up at work or with Emma. And I do the same. I let her see me on my bad days, when I'm tired or in pain or just grumpy. I let her help me when I need it instead of pretending I'm fine. We're real with each other, fully, completely real, and that's a gift. Danny commented on it the other day. He said, "You know what's crazy? I feel like I can be more myself at home now too. Like before, when you two weren't getting along, I was always managing everyone's feelings, trying to keep the peace. But now I can just be. It's such a relief." We hadn't really thought about how our conflict had affected him, but of course it had. He was caught in the middle, loving us both, trying to make everyone happy. And now that Olivia and I have our own relationship, our own bond, he doesn't have to be the bridge between us anymore. He can just be our son and her husband, and that's enough. Actually, that's another thing I've learned through all of this. My relationship with Danny has gotten even better now that I'm not depending on him for everything emotionally. I have Olivia too now. I have my own life, my own friendships, my own sources of support and joy. I'm not just Danny's mom anymore. I'm Maggie. I'm Olivia's friend. I'm Emma's Gamma. I'm a retired nurse who volunteers at the hospital. I'm a woman with hobbies and interests and a full life.
And ironically, becoming less dependent on Danny has made our relationship richer. We can have conversations about his life and his dreams without it always being about me and my needs. We can just enjoy each other's company. Last week, he and I went out for lunch, just the two of us. Olivia stayed home with Emma and insisted we have some mother-son time. "I'm really proud of you, Mom," Danny said over our sandwiches. "For what?" "For building a life here. For not just existing in our house, but actually thriving. For becoming friends with Liv. For everything. I'm proud of you too, honey. You've become such an amazing man, such a great father and husband. I learned from the best," he said with a smile.
We talked for hours about his work, about his dreams for the future, about his hopes for Emma, and he told me something I didn't know. When Liv and I were first married, I was so worried that you'd never approve of her, that you'd always see her as not good enough or something, because you're my mom and you have high standards for the people I love. Did I ever make you feel like I didn't approve? No, not really, but I could tell something was off between you two from the start, and I felt helpless to fix it. I'm sorry we put you through that. Don't be. You both figured it out. And honestly, watching you two work through your issues, watching you forgive each other and build this incredible friendship, it taught me a lot about marriage and relationships. It showed me that conflict doesn't have to be the end, that you can work through hard things if you're both committed. I hadn't thought about it that way, but he was right. Olivia and I had modeled something important for him. We'd shown him that relationships take work, that forgiveness is possible, that love is a choice you make every day. When I got home from lunch, Olivia was in the nursery with Emma, singing to her. I stood in the doorway for a minute, just watching them. Emma was gazing up at her mama with so much love, and Olivia was looking back at her the same way. And I thought about how close I came to missing all of this. If I left when Olivia told me to, I never would have experienced the joy of watching her become a mother. I never would have gotten to be Gamma to this perfect little girl. I never would have found this second family, this second chance at happiness. Thank God I stayed. Thank God we both fought for this. Olivia saw me in the doorway and smiled. "How was lunch with Danny?" "It was wonderful. How are my girls?" "We're good. Emma and I were just having a little concert. She's a very appreciative audience." I came in and sat in the rocking chair, and Olivia handed Emma to me. The baby immediately grabbed my finger and started chewing on it, which is apparently her new favorite activity. "Maggie?" Olivia said. "Yeah?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on us, for staying, for giving me a chance to be better, for everything." "Thank you for the same things," I said. "We saved each other, I think." "Yeah," she agreed. "We really did." And that's the truth of it. I saved Olivia from becoming her mother, from being trapped in patterns of criticism and coldness. And she saved me from loneliness, from feeling like my life was over, from believing I had nothing left to offer. We saved each other. And together, we're building something beautiful, a family that's messy and imperfect and real and full of so much love. So yeah, my daughter-in-law once told me I didn't belong, but then she read my diary and everything changed. And now I belong here more than I've ever belonged anywhere. This is my home. These are my people. This is my family. And I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.